This is really, really comfy. So
it's not really a round table, is it?
It is not really, but a bit more comfortable.
It's more like a talk show discussion.
So we will soon discover how this comfiness can contribute to digital transformation. So actually the purpose of the discussion and where we have started, last year we have run a small survey amongst Hungarian companies, and we were really wondering on how we are approaching digital transformation. Obviously, a very interesting question was how much HR is at the table. And it's not so surprising that what we have figured is that basically we still approach HR, the digital transformations through IT and tech. And HR and culture is not that much on the table yet. And I know that you have a very different perspective on that. And this is why we wanted to have this short conversation on the 3 main learnings around culture related to digital transformation. So the first question was actually go to you, Chris, because I think you are probably you have the longest history as a Hungarian leader, although not born Hungarian, but I think that sometimes we already feel that you were born here. So having the longest history probably with digital transformation across the country, how do you see this now? So is it really tech or rather a cultural issue?
Well, it's ultimately it is a cultural issue, but of course it involves technology, because in the business that I used to run for over a decade, it was very much a digitally disrupted business. So there was a culture, there was a way of doing things in the company that seemed to work just fine under certain circumstances, and then the world changed around us, and the big change that came really was it was made possible by a lot of digital technologies. So it forced us to rethink how we were going to do things. And maybe the learnings here are that what were the first responses we had to that? And the first responses we had were sort of hierarchical in nature. So we saw that new competitors, new disrupting competitors were very agile. So we thought we got to be agile too. So we set up. We installed an agility czar.
It's just simple and easy.
Yeah, it was super easy, but it didn't have a lot of impact. And just putting agility in the organization, saying, "Oh, this is the guy to go to," really wasn't connected with the rest of the organization. You had to really engage people. And a big aha moment for us was when we set up a second brand. So one of the things that we tried to do to digitally transform over several years was try to renew and rejuvenate our billing systems, our information systems that we have running the company. Huge project, many years, a lot of frustration in a lot of people. But then when we set up a second brand, we told these people, listen, you're going to be part of an elite team, and we're going to leave you alone. You have your purpose. We're just going to leave you to it and have you set up your own second brand. And we want you to go on the offensive. And people were like, are you really going to leave us alone? And I said, yeah, we're really going to leave you alone. And we can really do things the way we want to do it. I said, yeah. And I remember there was one meeting at the beginning where people, there was a debate, is it something they're going to do going to hurt the interest of the parent company? And I sided I came in on the side of the agile division there, and that's when they started to believe it. And the miracle for me, the cultural issue, was that some of the same people, about 10 of the same people who had been working for years in the traditional sort of hierarchical formation on this huge monster IT systems project, and got nothing but frustration. The same people, when you put them to work on this project and you gave them real empowerment, real autonomy, real purpose, they shined, and they delivered way, way above what we thought could be done in such a short period of time. So yes, it's technology. You have to get the right people on board who know the technology, who sometimes know more than you do about it, and that's another cultural issue. When so many things are changing, you cannot rely on hierarchy, on the guy on top knowing more than the people on the bottom. Ain't going to happen. It does not work. But if you really give people empowerment and you're credible doing that, then things start to click. So, don't have it. One lesson here is definitely you need to have a growth mindset in the company, but you need to be credible in giving people the empowerment and the autonomy and the sense of purpose that they have. I really paid a lot of attention to the last few slides of our previous presenter because a lot of that really rings true.
Thank you for that. So, Stefano, how do you see the impact on HR from a digital transformation perspective? The impact on HR and also the cultural changes you probably had to introduce.
Can you hear me? No? They told me not to touch it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now it works. Well, actually, digital transformation implies people transformation, and people transformation implies culture transformation. There's no way you can disconnect the two things. In our experience in Microsoft, this has been accelerated a lot 5 years ago when Satya Nadella took the role of CEO for the company. And we started on a culture transformation journey that is still lasting. You don't change the culture of a company, which is 130,000 employees, actually, almost 140 now. In 1 year or 2 years is a journey. And actually there's many reasons why we decided to do that. I will mention one which for us is critical, which is the talent scarcity for digital talent. So there's issues on the input. So there's not enough people who have the right competencies and skills. Think of machine learning, think of AI that gets from the universities and from the typical places where we were used to look for talent. And then there is a war for this talent that goes way beyond our historical, our competitors in tech were the ones who are coming to take talent from us, the Google, the Amazon, the Oracle. Now it's any Fortune 1000 company that is embarking in a digital transformation journey who comes and try to look for our talent. Our startups, if you're a digital talent, why don't you try to build your next unicorn company and get into some success that you cannot get in an organization. So for us, it was critical to say we need to build a culture where we don't just attract talent, but we keep talent inside. And I think Satya made it very clear in his first shareholder investors meeting when he has been named CEO, when he simplified the whole concept for us in Microsoft, which was to switch from a know-it-all culture, an engineering culture where you were supposed to know every answer to every question in every meeting and people were hyper prepared on everything and getting in all the details, to a learn-it-all culture where actually we made much more easier for people to just realize and admit easily you cannot know everything. You cannot be the boss who resolves the issues for everyone. And that's very related to the growth mindset that Chris was mentioning before. So that's how it has started for us.
So it's just one question raised to my mind that I think it implies a lot of mistakes. So if you are a learn-it-all culture, so how do you handle mistakes in a culture of failure?
Ooh, well, that you have to redefine what a mistake is in some senses. In the traditional hierarchical product development logic, you would have people on the top tell people next level down from them, next level down from them to produce something, and it would get produced in a matter of X months, and then it would get put out. So by the time anything ever went out to the customer, months and months and months and months of work had already gone into it. That already you're at a stage where that cannot fail. And in the traditional hierarchical culture, you had a lot of, the way things are structured, you were constantly producing something that could not fail. In a new agile culture that really uses the technology that's at our disposal, collaboration technologies that Microsoft is really focusing on a lot right now, you can break that down into much smaller steps. You can use what you've done and learn from those steps so that you can fail and you can learn from that failure a lot quicker, so that a failure is not really a failure. It's really just a learning. And I think and using technology in that way so that it's buttressed by the culture can help engender this growth mindset instead of having people focused on the risks of a big failure, rather than looking at a smaller failure and a quicker failure as an opportunity to learn.
Yeah, and actually the failure is just when you don't learn from the failure.
Yeah,
that's actually when and then that's how you look at the growth mindset piece. And this is also connected to how we change our performance management system in the company a few years ago. We probably also have a slide for that could simplify, where actually we started like any other big company based on meritocracy. We assess the impact of people and what they do. But the way we have changed it through a concept of 3 circles of impact, that's something that has been really changing the scene for us. So actually, to simplify, when we assess the performance and the impact of a person in the company today, we assess 3 things. Number 1 is what almost every company assesses, your individual performance. Tons of KPIs. You can be sure there's a number for everything that you need to reach in the company. And that's mainly related to what you do. There are 2 other elements that you assess with the same weight of this first one, which are, one is how much have you contributed to others? What has been your effective contribution to the success of other people? That's relevant for every organization, which, like our organization, is big, but is going through the typical shortening of the organization in terms of layers, having bigger and bigger teams. The real impact is typically done by virtual teams or teams that are going across the company where people have to collaborate for a certain period of time. So how much are you really contributing to the success of others? That equals to your individual impact. If it is done at the expense of others, that's not something that we want to value and that we want to reward. And the third circle, which that's definitely something that I think very few are doing today, is actually how much are you leveraging the others' ideas and contribution for your success and for reaching the goals of the company. Not for your individual success, but to get to the results. And that's a concept that came through shortly after Satya came in. And that's very interesting. There's many companies where actually leveraging on the ideas of others is not even seen as culturally good. While for us is the critical point of you have this enormous amount of very smart people around you who do very smart things. You have this sort of company collective intelligence that you never use that collective intelligence 100%. That doesn't work. But the concept of assessing the ability of a person on how you can take the resources in the company, the ideas, the contributions, and transform them in success for what your team is doing, what you're doing. That has been a big change versus the old concept that we had in the company in terms of how we assess. The first round of new performance assessment was super challenging, and you can tell that people were used to assess, the managers were used to assess their own people, typically on their own individual contributions, and sometimes on how much they were helping others being successful. But how do you measure how much you have contributed to others or how much you're helping others and leveraging the ideas of others? And we also introduced a system that we call perspective, where actually every person in the company can share horizontally, vertically, with any line you may want, their own perspective on how another person has contributed for them, with suggestions on what they can do better in the future. That has been structured and formalized. That has been helping a lot. Because again, in this shortened organization, that's much more important than whatever your boss is saying about your job.
I think this is super important because, to be agile, to be effective in the digital economy today, whether you're a small company or a large one the size of Microsoft, you're going to have to work in a much more virtual way. You're going to have to collaborate a lot more. And what I think what Stefano is emphasizing here is that you can't just, you have to incentivize that somehow. You can ask people to collaborate. You can put the tools in front of them. But if you have a credible system where you're actually incentivizing people to not only take learnings of others, but give learnings to others as well, and define impact of all 3 of these aspects, what you do personally, what you get from others, what you give to others. If you credibly incentivize all 3 of those things, then that's a very important cultural lever to really activate and use the technology that you do have at your disposal. It makes a virtual organization actually work.
It actually drives the behavioral change.
And it drives the behavior.
For.
Yeah.
So one question just popped to my mind is you were actually coming from a digitally very mature organization when you joined. Was there anything at Microsoft that was new, or if you had like a wow moment?
There were a couple. It's only been 6 months or so, but there've already been a couple. But one of them, really at the very beginning, when I first started to talk to Microsoft about joining them, I had one interview, 2 or 3, a number of interviews, and I kept on waiting to go see somebody at the headquarters, European headquarters somewhere. And I discovered there is no European headquarters. It's all virtual. Stefano lives somewhere between Milan and Turin. Everybody on the team has a home somewhere, but the whole European organization really does work virtually. That was a bit of an aha moment that, wow, you can really make that work, and it really does work.
I think there is a lot of company actually in Hungary as well who is just starting to learn how to work more virtually. And I think it sometimes creates really funny moments. And I also recall that from our discussion, you also had some really funny stories and probably also have some pictures later on.
Yeah, and actually I would reconnect what Chris was mentioning on the virtual working. That's something that you're probably experiencing in your companies, higher or lower level of virtual working, remote working, people working from home, from a cafeteria, for wherever they are, because technology lets you do that. And through time, it's going to happen more and more and more. But there's one super important cultural aspect of that, which is technology has this paradox that the more we are connected technologically, the more we can feel left alone. And the people who works from remote can feel that it's called virtual distance way more than anyone else. And if any of you works virtually, knows that, you see that. You don't have the water cooler conversations with your colleagues, you don't have, or the coffee machine in the case of Italy. It's you don't have the lunch with the other people, and this impacts a lot what you do. As an individual, you need to help your individuals who works like that to be much more intentional in the way they connect with the rest of the organization. And as organization, the number one lever to balance that is inclusion, actually. And I love the way Satya thinks of inclusion, because it's not just something that is nice to do, ethically correct, something that helps you get diversity, but actually is really seen as the counterbalance of what technology can take out in terms of human relationships. A virtual team, I work with a lot of virtual teams. I have some teams that are fantastic in terms of making people feel included, even if they're working virtually. And remember that if you're not actively including, you're probably excluding someone. And if you've ever been in a virtual call where you did not have the video, and some people in a room in the headquarters were making fun and jokes, and you were not understanding anything about what they were telling or smiling, that's exactly the sort of moment when you feel excluded. When there's a job opening that in front of the water cooler machine, a colleague would have told you, hey, have you seen that there's role is opening? Maybe that will be good for you. You work from home. Rarely someone calls you just because to tell you, oh, I heard about that, because this happens through the normal, I would say, unstructured human interactions that we have. So that's super important in terms of cultural change if you want to balance the use of technology into the company and what it can bring to you, to make sure that there's a counterbalance of remote working. In fact, what I do, I found this super good practice from this company in the US that is called Delivering Happiness, which are the main consultants of Zappos, the online retailer. You may have heard about them because they do a lot of new things and new stuff in terms of that. And this company does not have any office at all. Everyone works from home or whatever they want. And they have a couple of very nice practices that they do when there's a new team member gets in a team. And maybe we have a photo of that, because that refers to actually the place where I work, that I'm just started doing after I found this, if we can project it, otherwise I'll talk through it. Actually, when you get into a new team to Delivering Happiness, you make a video of your home office, 3 to 5 minutes, and you film everything. And then in your first meeting, you talk to people about why do I have a print of Taormina, the most beautiful city in Sicily, whatever it is, because there's a very important person in my life who lives in there, and I got that gift from that person, and I could talk through any of these points. And what's the meaning of that? If you don't do this deliberately, if you don't share about your virtual working with people, people will just go task-focused. If you work virtually, typically a virtual call is all about we need to deliver this, let's do this. Oh, we finished 7 minutes before, I give you 7 minutes back. Because virtuality and technology brings that task focus. So you have to be very intentional about how do you create the relationship. Someone who talks to me, even if they are over the phone on the car, they cannot see me on the video, they can still imagine myself if they know the office and the place where I work. Or having some time in all the meetings for people to talk through topics that are not just work related. You have to recreate it in some sort of way. Reality is that people normally just do that. And I don't want to be oversimplifying, but many times we just give technology to people and expect that they sort it out. Mm-hmm. From a cultural perspective, there's a lot that we can do as a HR function to help people balance this with some more humanity, I would say.
There's another phrase in there that we use in Microsoft and that I saw reflected in the previous presentation, and that was your authentic self. So bringing your authentic self. I think that's really important for the reasons you've just outlined. And it's really important, I think, for managers and leaders to sort of model that behavior. And as a result of that, one maybe surprising thing that I find in Microsoft is we use a lot of electronic tools. We have our own product, Teams, but within Teams, a lot of very serious discussions are accompanied by a lot of memes being shared and a lot of GIFs. And the nature of the conversation that you're having in this virtual space become a little bit more personal than what you might be accustomed to in another sort of environment. It's not a bad thing. It's neither good nor bad. It just it's one of the features of this culture of bringing your authentic self to the workplace.
I actually really like this photo. It just reminded me one of the situations I had with one of my colleagues. You had a similar picture in the background when we had a call. And that was actually the time when I found a really interesting book just behind him. So we just made a quick tour and understanding what they are reading nowadays. And we also shared some knowledge through that. So bringing in some more personal information into those generally not really personal relationships can really make it a general interaction, even if you're not at the same place.
Yeah, that helps a lot. You always have to be very careful about the cultural aspect of this, because there may be different cultures where certain things are more acceptable, or asking people to do certain things should be optional and not making them feel forced. But on the other side, what we see for sure is that when you use technology and you let people work from wherever they are, many good things happen, but you need to care about your people even more. The fact that they're far from your office and you don't see them doesn't mean they can, let's say, still feel engaged with you and with the company, unless you really care about that piece and look after that piece very intentionally.
And sometimes I think a very good thing about Teams that you can also blur the background if you need it. So you don't always have to tidy up in case of someone is calling. So as we are entering into the last minute, I would probably ask you, Chris, again, from a CEO perspective, what would be your main recommendation toward the HR leaders and HR specialists and generalists in the room? How should they approach digital transformation and how they can help their organization the best?
If I could summarize it in one sentence or one thought or a series of thoughts, I would say really, really pay attention to the word empowerment, because it's a buzzword. It's become a buzzword because it gets used a lot. But if you want to be competitive, if you want to become digital, if you want a digital transformation to succeed, the cultural transformation has to succeed. And you need to make sure that you're empowering people to do things, to make decisions in a timely fashion. You need to use the technology. Technology is a key part of it, but if you just leave it at the technology, chances are high that it really won't go any further than that.
So thank you very much for both of you for the discussion. And I think the key learning what we all can take home with us is that HR really has a place to feel when we are talking about digital transformation and how to accelerate our companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you.